The silk of Fu Hai's custom-tailored suits brushed against my cheeks, smelling faintly of cedar and the expensive sandalwood cologne I had bought him for our 3rd anniversary. I huddled in the corner of the massive walk-in closet, my knees tucked against my chest, a small, giddy smile playing on my lips.
Today was the day.
Fu Hai had finally been named senior partner, a promotion we had both sacrificed so much for. I had spent the afternoon preparing his favorite meal and hiding a vintage watch, worth 6 months of my savings, inside his shoebox. I wanted to see the look on his face. I wanted to be the first person to congratulate him in the privacy of our sanctuary. The bedroom door clicked open. I held my breath, my heart fluttering like a trapped bird. "He's home early," I whispered to myself, pressing my eye against the thin wooden slats of the closet door. But it wasn't just Fu Hai. A high-pitched, melodic giggle echoed through the room, a sound that didn't belong to me. Then came Fu Hai's voice, deeper and more gravelly than I had ever heard it. "Careful, baby. If we break anything, the lady of the house will have a heart attack over her precious antiques." I froze. Through the slats, I saw Fu Hai walk into the center of our bedroom, his arm wrapped tightly around the waist of a woman I didn't recognize. She was tall, wearing a dress that was little more than a slip of red silk, and her hair was a waterfall of bleached blonde. "Oh, please," the woman said, tossing her clutch onto my vanity. She picked up one of my favorite pearl hairpins, turning it over with a look of pure disgust. "How does she even wear this stuff? It's so matronly. Your wife has the fashion sense of a Victorian nun, Hai. It's ugly." Fu Hai laughed, a sharp, jagged sound that cut through my soul. He pulled her closer, his hands roaming over her back with a hunger he hadn't shown me in years. "She's classic, or so her father says. Personally, I call it repressed. I have to turn the lights off just to get through a night with her. Dressing her up is like putting a designer label on a sack of flour." "You're so mean," she giggled, leaning back as he began to kiss her neck. "But at least she has good taste in furniture. This bed looks much more comfortable than the one in my apartment." "It should be," Fu Hai said, his voice dropping to a dark, lustful growl. "She spent 3 months picking out the mattress to ensure I'd get restful sleep. Let's see if we can put it to better use." I watched, paralyzed, as they tumbled onto the hand-embroidered duvet I had spent hours steaming that morning. Every word they spoke was a poison-tipped arrow. They mocked my style, my quiet nature, and the way I meticulously cared for our home. I felt the heat of 1,000 suns rising in my chest, a mixture of agonizing heartbreak and a cold, crystalline realization. The man I loved was a stranger, and my life was a beautifully curated lie. "Wait," the woman whispered, breathless. "What if she comes back? She's at the grocery store getting ingredients for a celebration dinner." Fu Hai sneered, his fingers fumbling with his belt. "We have at least 2 hours of peace before the ugly returns." I couldn't stay silent any longer. The rage, sharp and jagged, finally broke through the paralysis of my shock. I pushed the closet door open, the wood creaking like a scream in the quiet room. 2 hours of peace?" I asked, my voice trembling so violently I could barely recognize it. They scrambled apart. Fu Hai fell off the side of the bed, his face shifting from passion to a ghostly, mottled gray. The woman, the mistress, gasped, clutching the sheets to her chest, her eyes wide with a feline sort of fear. "Xian? Yi Xian?" Fu Hai stammered, scrambling to his feet. He looked pathetic, his shirt half unbuttoned, his hair disheveled. "What are you? Why were you in the closet?" "I wanted to surprise you," I said, stepping into the room. I felt like I was walking through deep water. "I wanted to celebrate your promotion, but I think I've seen enough celebrating for a lifetime." "Xian, baby, listen to me," Fu Hai said, taking a cautious step toward me. He tried to put on that soothing, manipulative voice he used whenever we had an argument. "It's not what it looks like. She's a client. We had a drink, and things got out of hand. It's the stress, you know?" "A client?" I laughed, a broken, hysterical sound. "Does the client usually call your wife a sack of flour, Fu Hai?" Does she usually comment on how ugly my clothes are while she's in my bed? Shut up, Xian, he snapped, his voice suddenly turning cold. The mask was slipping. You weren't supposed to be here. You've ruined everything. Do you know what this will do to my reputation? If this gets out, the partnership is gone. Good, I hissed, reaching for my phone on the nightstand. I'm calling my father. I'm calling the board. I want you out of this house tonight. I can't let you do that, he said. Before I could reach the phone, he lunged. He was stronger than me, his hands like iron as he pinned me against the vanity. Fragrance bottle shattered, the scent of jasmine and roses filling the air, a sickeningly sweet perfume for a crime scene. Fu Hai, stop. I screamed, clawing at his arms. You're always so dramatic, Xian. Always so fragile, he roared. He looked around frantically, his eyes landing on the silk scarf I had draped over the mirror, a gift from my mother. It was emerald green, soft and beautiful. He grabbed it. Just be quiet for once, he shouted. He looped the silk around my neck, twisting it with a desperate, frantic strength. I couldn't breathe. The world began to dim at the edges, the golden light of the bedroom turning into a muddy, terrifying gray. I looked at him, my husband, my protector, and saw only a monster. Behind him, the mistress was screaming, but she didn't help. She just watched as the man she loved squeezed the life out of his wife. I'm sorry, he whispered, his eyes wide and bloodshot. I'm sorry, but you wouldn't just be quiet. My lungs burned. My heart gave one last, agonizing thud against my ribs. As the darkness finally claimed me, my last thought wasn't of love or even betrayal. It was a cold, silent vow. If there is a God, let me come back. Let me be the monster this time. I woke up with a gasp that tore through my throat, my hands flying to my neck. I expected to feel the rough pull of silk and the crushing weight of Fu Hai's grip. Instead, my skin was cool, and the only thing around my neck was the thin lace of my favorite nightgown. I rolled out of bed, collapsing onto the floor. My heart was racing at a lethal tempo, my vision blurring. I crawled toward the full-length mirror, my breath coming in ragged, shallow hitches. I looked at my reflection. My neck was white and unblemished. There were no bruises, no marks of a struggle. I looked young, vibrant, not like a woman who had just been strangled to death. It was a dream, I whispered, my voice shaking. It had to be a dream. I reached for my phone on the nightstand. The screen lit up. June 14th, 7 a.m. My blood turned to ice. June 14th. This was the day of Fu Hai's promotion. This was the morning I was supposed to go to the grocery store to buy the ingredients for the beef Wellington. This was the day I was supposed to hide in the closet. No, I breathed, a hysterical laugh escaping my lips. No, it wasn't a dream. It was a warning. I stood up, my legs finally steadying. The air in the room felt different now, sharper, clearer. I looked at the bed, the very spot where I had seen them just an hour ago, a lifetime ago. The duvet was perfectly smooth. The room was silent. I walked to the walk-in closet and opened the door. There were his suits, smelling of cedar and sandalwood. I reached out and touched the emerald green scarf draped over the mirror. It felt soft, innocent. I yanked it down and threw it into the trash can. Never again, I said. I didn't start the coffee. I didn't prepare his breakfast. Instead, I sat at my vanity and began to apply my makeup. Not the subtle, classic look Fu Hai preferred, but something sharper, darker. I lined my eyes with a charcoal flick and chose a lipstick the color of dried blood. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Fu Hai. Heading into the final board meeting now, Xian. Wish me luck. I'll be home late, don't wait up for me. I might have to grab a celebratory drink with the guys. The guys, I muttered, my grip tightening on the phone until my knuckles turned white. I knew I couldn't handle this alone. I was a woman with a broken heart and a terrifying secret, but I wasn't powerless. My father had always been suspicious of Fu Hai. He had once told me he had a shadow watching over me, just in case. I used to think it was overprotective and insulting. Now it was my only lifeline. I scrolled through my contacts until I found a number with no name, just a string of digits my father had forced me to save a year ago. I hit dial. Yexian? A voice answered after a single ring. It was a deep, steady baritone, sounding like it belonged to someone who had never known a moment of panic in his life. Mo Xiao, I said, my voice finally firm. I need you.
Now.
20 minutes later, a black SUV pulled up to the curb of our suburban home. The sky had turned a moody, bruised purple, and a light drizzle began to fall, slicking the pavement. I stood on the porch, wrapped in a trench coat, watching as a man stepped out of the vehicle. Mo Xiao. I had met him only once, at my father's 60th birthday gala. He had stood in the corner, a silent sentinel in a perfectly tailored suit, his eyes never leaving the room. My father had introduced him as a family friend, but the way the other guests avoided his gaze told a different story. He was a private investigator, a fixer, a man who dealt in the currency of secrets. He walked up the driveway with a grace that was almost predatory. He was taller than Fu Hai, with a jawline that looked like it had been carved from flint and eyes that were a piercing, intelligent gray. You sound different on the phone, Mo Xiao said, stopping at the base of the porch steps. He didn't use an umbrella. The rain clung to his dark hair like tiny diamonds. You sound like you've seen a ghost. I have, I said, stepping down to meet him. And I'm about to become one if I don't move fast. He didn't ask questions. He didn't offer empty platitudes. He simply opened the passenger door for me. Where to? A cafe, I said. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere far away from this house. We drove in silence for a few miles. I watched the wipers flick back and forth, the rhythm hypnotic. Mo Xiao drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting casually on the gear shift. Every so often, I caught him glancing at me in the rearview mirror, his expression unreadable. We pulled into a small, tucked-away bistro on the edge of the city. We sat in a corner booth, the smell of roasted coffee and old paper surrounding us. Your father pays me to keep you safe, Yexian, Mo Xiao said, leaning forward. He didn't touch his espresso. Usually that means making sure no one follows you to the market or checking the backgrounds of your new friends. But this morning felt like an emergency. Fu Hai is having an affair, I said, the words coming out flat and cold. Mo Xiao didn't look surprised. I know. I've had photos of them for 3 months. I was waiting for your father's signal to show them to you. I flinched. 3 months? You knew for 3 months, and you didn't tell me. My orders were to protect you, not to break your heart, he said, his voice softening just a fraction. Your father wanted to wait until the promotion was finalized so you could take him for everything in the divorce. He didn't want you to act on impulse. It's more than an affair, Mo Xiao, I said, leaning over the table, my voice dropping to a whisper. He's going to kill me. Or he already did. I can't explain it, but I know how this ends. I saw it. The green scarf, the vanity, the way he looked at me. Mo Xiao's eyes sharpened. He didn't call me crazy. He reached across the table and placed his hand over mine. His palm was warm and calloused, a solid weight that grounded me. If you say he's a threat, Mo Xiao said. I've watched you for a year, Yexian. I've watched you be a good wife to a man who isn't worth the dirt on your shoes. I've sat in my car outside your house, wishing I could tell you that you deserve a world that doesn't require you to hide who you are. You've been watching me that closely? I asked. More than you know, he whispered. I don't just work for your father. I work for you. Tell me what you want to do, and it will be done. My resources, my life, they're yours. I looked into Mo Xiao's gray eyes and saw something I had never seen in Fu Hai's absolute, unwavering loyalty. There was no agenda here, no corporate ladder to climb, no image to maintain. There was just a man who had spent a year in the shadows, waiting for me to finally see the truth. His hand was still over mine, and for the first time in years, the coldness in my chest began to thaw, replaced by a slow, simmering heat. I don't want a divorce, Mo Xiao, I said, my voice gaining a sharp, crystalline edge. A divorce is too clean. He'll walk away with his dignity, a payout, and the narrative that we just grew apart. I want him to lose the very things he killed me for. I want his reputation, his comfort, and the woman he thinks is his prize. And Mo Xiao's lips curled into a faint, dangerous smile. It wasn't the smile of a friend. It was the smile of a hunter who had just been given permission to strike. That woman. You mean Lily? Is that her name? I asked, the name feeling like ash in my mouth. She looked so young, so vibrant. That's one of her names, and Mo Xiao said, pulling a thin, sleek tablet from his inner coat pocket. He swiped through several encrypted files and turned the screen toward me. Her real name is Elena Vance. She's a professional, Yixian. She doesn't do affairs for love or even for a fancy dinner. She does them for equity. She targets men on the verge of major career milestones, men with high-stress lives and massive egos, convinces them to hide assets with her to protect them from their wives, and then she vanishes. I stared at the photos on the screen. In some, she was a brunette, in others, a redhead. But the predatory gleam in her eyes was always the same. In the most recent photo, she was walking into a high-end jewelry store with Fu Hai, laughing as he pointed toward a diamond tennis bracelet. So, she's a scammer? I asked, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. Fu Hai thinks he's found a soulmate who understands his ambition. In reality, he's found a black hole. A world-class one, and Mo Xiao confirmed. He's already opened a secondary offshore account in her name. My team tracked 3 transfers this week alone. He's been funneling his promotion bonuses and half of your savings into it. He thinks he's building a new life. He doesn't realize she's already booked a flight to Zurich for next Tuesday. The irony was delicious. Fu Hai was willing to kill me to keep his secret, all while the woman he was protecting was preparing to rob him blind. I can release the proof of her identity to the board right now, and Mo Xiao offered, his thumb hovering over the send button. I can show them that their new senior partner is not only an adulterer, but a fool who has compromised the firm's security by associating with a known fraudster. Not yet, I said, leaning closer, our faces only inches apart in the quiet booth. The scent of his sandalwood cologne was grounding, a stark contrast to the cloying floral scent of my own bedroom. If we do it now, he'll just play the victim. He'll say he was tricked by a con artist. I want him to come home tonight to a house that doesn't belong to him anymore. I want him to feel the same vacuum I felt when I was dying in that closet. And Mo Xiao leaned back, his eyes dancing with a dark, appreciative light. You're not the woman I've been following for the last year. That woman was a saint. I like this version of you much better. The saint died in a closet, I said simply. This one is just getting started. And Mo Xiao, can you get me a moving crew? A big one? I want him to walk into an empty house. I want his throne removed. And Mo Xiao reached out and tucked a stray hair behind my ear, his fingers lingering just a second too long for it to be professional. I'll have a team there in 30 minutes. My resources, my men, and my life are at your disposal, Yixian. I told your father I'd watch over you, but the truth is, I've been waiting for a reason to step out of the shadows for you. Why? I whispered. Because I hated seeing you be perfect for a man who didn't deserve a single breath you took, he said, his voice dropping to a low, fervent rumble. Tonight, we finish this. And tomorrow? Tomorrow, I'm taking you to breakfast. Not as a shadow, but as a man who wants to see that red lipstick again. The silence of our suburban home was broken not by the laughter I once tried so hard to cultivate, but by the heavy, rhythmic thud of work boots on hardwood. I stood in the center of the foyer, my arms crossed, watching as Mo Xiao's team of 6 silent, efficient movers swarmed the house. They moved like shadows, guided by the precise instructions Mo Xiao had given them before we even stepped out of his SUV. Everything? The lead mover asked, pausing at the foot of the stairs and looking at me for confirmation. Everything that belongs to him, I said, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears, colder, sharper, and utterly devoid of the warmth I had once wasted on Fu Hai. Every suit, every shoe, every book with his name on the spine. If he touched it, I want it gone. The master bedroom first, Mo Xiao added, stepping up behind me. His presence was a solid, warm weight at my back, a stark contrast to the hollow chill the house usually held. Especially the bed. I led the way upstairs, my heart skipping a beat as I entered the master suite. It still smelled faintly of the expensive floral perfume the mistress had worn, a scent that now made my stomach churn. I looked at the bed, the silk duvet still slightly rumpled from where they had lain. In my mind, I could still see the green scarf tightening around my neck. "This mattress," I said, pointing a trembling finger at the bed. "And the frame. And the bedding. All of it. I want it out of this house in 10 minutes. "Where to, ma'am?" the mover asked. "The local women's shelter," I replied. "Tell them it's a donation from a household that no longer needs its old baggage. Tell them it's for someone starting a new life." As the men began to dismantle the frame, the sound of metal clinking and wood sliding felt like a symphony of liberation. I walked toward the walk-in closet, the place where I had breathed my last, and stopped at the threshold. The cedar-scented air hit me, and for a moment, I felt the phantom pressure of Fu Hai's hands on my throat. And Mo Xiao was there in an instant. He didn't say a word, but he reached out and took my hand, his thumb tracing slow, grounding circles over my knuckles. "You don't have to go in there, Yi Xian," he whispered, his voice a low, protective rumble. "My men can handle it." "No," I said, looking up at him. The gray of his eyes was like a calm sea before a storm, and I felt a sudden, fierce urge to lean into him. "I need to see it empty. I need to know the ugly woman he hated is finally taking up all the space." He squeezed my hand. "Then I'm staying right here." We watched together as the movers cleared the closet. Dozens of custom-tailored suits were bagged and carried away. His collection of designer watches, including the one I had hidden for his promotion, were packed into a box destined for the pawn shop, the proceeds of which Mo Xiao promised would go into a trust for my future. "The courier has arrived at Elena's apartment," Mo Xiao said, checking his phone as the last of Fu Hai's shoes were hauled out. "She just received the gift, the dossier of her own criminal history and a bank notification that the offshore accounts she thought she owned are under investigation for fraud. My team says she's already packing her bags. She's a professional, Yi Xian. She won't stay for a sinking ship." "And Fu Hai?" I asked, a dark, satisfied spark in my eyes. "He just finished his second bottle of wine at the celebration dinner," Mo Xiao replied, a smirk playing on his lips. "He's about to ask for the check. He has no idea his credit cards are currently as useless as his wedding vows." I looked around the now empty bedroom. It was bare, stripped of the lies that had furnished it for years. I felt a strange, intoxicating sense of power. I turned to Mo Xiao, noticing for the first time how the light from the window caught the sharp line of his jaw. "You've done so much for me today," I said, stepping closer to him. The air between us suddenly felt charged, the professional distance we had maintained all day beginning to dissolve. Mo Xiao reached out, his hand lingering near my waist before he pulled me into a soft, brief embrace. "I've spent a year watching you be a shadow, Yi Xian," he murmured against my hair. "Watching you shine like this, it's the only payment I need. But I'm still holding you to that breakfast tomorrow." "I wouldn't dream of missing it," I replied, my voice a soft promise. The house felt like a hollowed-out ribcage, echoing and cold. I sat in the only piece of furniture left in the living room, a simple wooden chair I had pulled from the breakfast nook. The single lamp beside me cast long, distorted shadows against the bare white walls. I had spent years meticulously decorating this space, choosing every rug and painting to please a man who thought I was ugly. Now, the emptiness was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. I checked my phone. A text from Mo Xiao read, "He's pulling into the driveway. He looks like he's had a very long night. I'm right outside." I took a slow breath, smoothing the skirt of my black silk dress. I felt like a queen waiting in her fortress. A few moments later, the front door burst open with a violent shudder. "Xian, Yi Xian." Fu Hai's voice roared through the foyer, thick with alcohol and a jagged, desperate edge. He stumbled into the entryway, his expensive charcoal suit jacket hanging off one shoulder. What the hell is going on with the accounts? My card was declined in front of the managing partner. Do you have any idea how much of a fool I looked like? I had to borrow cash from Miller like a goddamn intern. He stopped mid-sentence. He blinked, his eyes darting around the vacant living room. The Persian rug was gone. His favorite leather recliner was gone. Even the built-in bookshelves had been stripped bare. What is this?" he stammered, his voice dropping to a confused whisper. "Where's the furniture? Xian, did we get robbed?" I stood up slowly, the heels of my shoes clicking sharply on the hardwood floor. "We didn't get robbed, Hai," I said, my voice as calm as a frozen lake. "I simply realized that this house was cluttered with things that didn't belong here anymore. So, I cleared them out." He ignored me, his face turning a mottled, angry purple as he ran toward the master bedroom. "My watches! My collection!" he shrieked. I followed him to the doorway of the bedroom. He was standing in the center of the vast, empty space, staring at the spot where our bed, the bed he had used for his tryst, used to be. All that remained in the room was the emerald green silk scarf, draped neatly over the shelf of the open, empty walk-in closet. "Where's my stuff?" he screamed, spinning around to face me. He looked pathetic, his eyes bloodshot and his face glistening with sweat. "My suits, Xian. My shoes. Everything is gone." "I donated them," I said, tilting my head slightly. "I figured since you were starting a new life with Elena, you'd want a fresh wardrobe. Though, I heard she prefers men who actually have money in their accounts, not men whose wives have frozen every cent of their joint assets." The mention of her name hit him like a physical blow. He froze, his mouth hanging open. How do you know about Elena?" "I know everything, Fu Hai," I said, stepping into the room. "I know about the offshore accounts. I know about the promotion bonuses you tried to hide. And I know about the way you talked about me behind my back. You called me a sack of flour. You called me ugly. Well, the ugly wife just took your throne." "You bitch," he roared, his face contorting into the same murderous mask I remembered from the night he killed me. He lunged forward, his hands reaching for my throat. "I'll kill you. I'll break you for this." But he never reached me. A hand like a vice gripped Fu Hai's collar from behind, and with a grunt of effort, Mo Xiao swung him around and slammed him against the bare bedroom wall. The thud echoed through the house. "Touch her again," Mo Xiao hissed, his voice a low, terrifying growl, "and I won't need a badge or a warrant to show you what a real struggle looks like." Fu Hai gasped, his feet dangling an inch off the floor. He looked at Mo Xiao, tall, powerful, and utterly lethal, and then back at me. "Who is this? Xian, who the hell is this man?" "This is the man who has been documenting your every move for months," I said, walking right up to Fu Hai's face. I didn't flinch. I didn't feel a flicker of the old fear. "The board of directors received a very interesting email 10 minutes ago. It contains the bank records for your offshore transfers and Elena's criminal history. You're not a senior partner, Hai. You're an unemployed, bankrupt pariah." "Elena wouldn't, she loves me," Fu Hai whispered, his bravado finally shattering. "Elena left for the airport 20 minutes ago," Mo Xiao said, dropping him like a sack of trash. "She realized the host was dead and moved on. You're alone, Fu Hai. Now, get out of this house before I call the police to trespass you." Fu Hai sat on the floor, looking at the empty closet and the single green scarf. He looked small. He looked like the nobody he had always feared being. Without a word, he scrambled to his feet and ran out of the house, his dignity trailing behind him like smoke. I turned to Mo Xiao, my chest heaving with a sudden, overwhelming sense of relief. "He's gone," I said, my voice trembling for the first time. "He's gone, Xian," Mo Xiao replied. He stepped closer, his hand coming up to gently cup my face. "And he's never coming back." The first rays of dawn crept across the bare hardwood floors, stretching long fingers of golden light into the corners where Fu Hai's expensive furniture used to stand. I woke up not to the sound of a harsh alarm or the heavy, judgmental breathing of a man I feared, but to the silence of absolute peace. I lay on my simple sleeping mat in the guest room, the only room I hadn't stripped, and watched the dust motes dance in the air. I sat up, stretching my limbs. My neck felt light. My heart felt steady. The phantom weight of that green silk scarf was finally, truly gone. I walked through the house with a cup of black coffee, my bare feet padding softly on the wood. The echo didn't haunt me anymore. It felt like a canvas waiting for a new masterpiece. I stopped at the master bedroom door. It was just a room now, 4 walls and a window. It held no power over me. The doorbell rang at exactly 8 a.m. I didn't rush. I didn't check the mirror to see if my hair was perfectly pinned or if my dress was appropriately modest. I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. I wore an oversized white button-down and leggings, my hair messy, and that same blood-red lipstick Mo Xiao had admired. I looked like a woman who had survived a war and won. I opened the door. Mo Xiao stood there, leaning against the porch railing. He had traded his tactical gear for a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms that looked like they were made of iron. "You're late," I said, a small, playful smile tugging at my lips. "I was making sure our friend caught his bus," Mo Xiao replied, stepping onto the porch. He looked me up and down, his eyes lingering on my face with a warmth that made my skin tingle. He spent the night in a motel that charges by the hour. I believe he was last seen trying to convince the manager that he's a senior partner who just had a minor banking glitch. "Did it work?" I asked. "The manager threatened to call the police," Mo Xiao said, a dark chuckle vibrating in his chest. "Fu Hai is currently walking toward the city center. I suspect he'll find out by noon that his name has been scrubbed from every professional directory in the state. He's a ghost, EXI. "Good," I whispered. I stepped out onto the porch, closing the door behind me. I didn't lock it. For the first time, I felt like the world outside was safer than the world I had built inside. "I'm done with ghosts." Mo Xiao walked closer, the scent of sandalwood and fresh morning air surrounding me. He reached out, his hand hesitating for a fraction of a second before he tucked a stray lock of hair behind my ear. "You look different today," he said softly. "The shadows are gone." "I died once, Mo Xiao," I said, looking up into his steady gray eyes. "I spent my whole life trying to be the woman everyone else wanted. The saint in the closet, the perfect wife. I realized this morning that I don't want to be perfect. I just want to be me." "I've spent a year watching you," he murmured, his thumb grazing my jawline. "And I can tell you for a fact, the you that stands here right now is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Red lipstick and all." "You promised me breakfast," I reminded him, my heart doing a slow, rhythmic dance against my ribs. "I did," he said. He offered me his arm, his expression turning serious for a moment. "But before we go, there's something you should know. I'm not a shadow anymore, Yexian. If you let me in, I'm in. All the way. No secrets, no hiding." "I think I've had enough of the shadows to last a lifetime," I said, sliding my hand into the crook of his arm. It felt solid. It felt real. As we walked down the driveway toward his SUV, I didn't look back at the empty house. I didn't think about the ugly clothes I had left behind or the man who had tried to silence me. I looked at the horizon, where the sun was burning away the last of the morning mist. "So," Mo Xiao said as he opened the car door for me, "where are we going? Somewhere classic?" "No," I said, flashing him a bright, defiant grin. "Somewhere loud. Somewhere new." He laughed, a rich, genuine sound that filled the air. "I think I can manage that."